They taped him under the table. The tape still glimmered in the noon light, wrapped across his tiny paws like some cruel joke no one bothered to notice. He didn't bark. He couldn't. His breathing came in small, frightened hiccups, each one shaking the plastic cup that had rolled next to him. People ate fries, scrolled on their phones, laughed at nothing. The smell of ketchup and heat filled the air. And beneath it all, this trembling life waited to be seen. When I finally crouched down, his eyes found mine. Wide, wet, almost human. He didn't ask for help. He just stared as if to say, "You're the first one who's looked." A small black German Shepherd puppy, maybe 8 weeks old, coated in dust and fear. He looked more shadow than dog, more silence than sound. The tape clung to his fur, cutting into his tiny legs. A fry fell from the table above him, landing by his ear. He flinched like it was a stone. I could hear the fryer hissing behind me. The same rhythm I'd listened to every day for 15 years of sweeping floors and wiping tables. But this sound, the shaking breath of a small dog trying not to cry, that one hit different. My name's Miguel, and that moment cracked something open inside me. I don't know if it was anger or pity, but it was alive and burning. The German Shepherd puppy blinked slow, trusting me in a way I didn't deserve yet. I whispered in Spanish first, "Tranquilo, Peno," then in English, "It's okay, buddy." The little pup trembled but didn't pull back. I slid onto my side, ignoring the grease on the concrete, trying to reach the tape. The table legs pressed into my ribs, but I didn't care. The crowd above kept eating, their voices loud, empty. No one noticed a janitor kneeling in the sun trying to save something that still believed in people. That tiny shepherd pup was shaking so hard I could feel it through the floor. I could smell fear on him, not the kind from pain, but from waiting too long for someone to care. My fingertips brushed the edge of the tape. The heat had melted the glue, making it tacky, stronger. He whimpered, a sound so soft it could have been a breath. For a second I froze. I thought about my grandmother's old shepherd back in Mexico, the one who guarded her chickens from snakes until the day he couldn't walk. That same loyalty lived in this small broken body under the table, and I wasn't going to walk away. I took a deep breath, pressed my hand against the sticky silver strip and pulled. The whole table shook. The tape clung to his fur like it didn't want to let go. Every millimeter I peeled felt like tearing skin from my own hands. Each pull made a faint ripping sound, and with it came a tuft of black hair from the tiny German Shepherd puppy trapped beneath that table. He didn't cry, just trembled, holding his breath like a child afraid of the dark. The noon sun hit the metal tabletop, bouncing light onto his eyes, and I swear I saw confusion there. The kind that asks why the world is so cruel. "Hey, Miguel?" The manager's voice cut through the heat. "You can't touch that." Liability. Liability. That's what they called it. A living, breathing little pup shaking like a leaf. I didn't answer. Behind me, fries sizzled and laughter rolled. Someone actually said, "Man, that's messed up," and then went right back to eating. The smell of oil, sweat, and indifference made my stomach turn. I reached for my pocket knife, but it was dull. "Scissors," I said to the fry cook. "Bring me scissors." The kid, 16 maybe, acne, earbuds in, grinned like it was a show. He laughed but handed them over, grease still on the handles. The rescued puppy whimpered, tiny paws twitching against the sticky ground. I cut through one strip, then another, my hands shaking with every slice. People walked past holding milkshakes, not even slowing down. No one saw the small dog breathing in gasps, still believing help would come. The heat pressed down hard, gluing my shirt to my back. I whispered, "Almost there, amigo." And the young shepherd blinked, trusting me anyway. He tried to lick my wrist, but the tape held him fast. A woman tossed her trash into the bin, her shadow passing right over us, her perfume covering the smell of fear. For a second, I wondered how many other souls were taped under someone's table just waiting for a stranger to notice. The scissors stuck halfway through the last strip. I yanked harder, and the glue stretched like melted sugar. A sharp snap, and suddenly the puppy jerked free, stumbling into my arms. He was light, too light, ribs showing through that black fur, heartbeat racing against my chest. I could feel every breath, every shiver, every ounce of life clinging on. The German Shepherd puppy pressed his head under my chin, quiet as a prayer. The manager was still talking, but I couldn't hear him anymore. There was only the smell of asphalt, hot metal, and this fragile heartbeat against my palm. I pulled the last bit of tape from his paw, and a patch of fur came with it. He winced just once and then sighed like it was over. The scissors slipped from my hand, hitting the pavement with a dull clang. The last strip of tape tore loose and the table stopped shaking. His ribs were still trembling, small, uneven, alive. The air behind the restaurant shimmered with heat. I carried the German Shepherd puppy into the narrow strip of shade by the wall, my arms sticky from the glue and the sweat. His body was weightless, trembling like a heartbeat I could feel through my shirt. The concrete burned through my knees as I set him down on an old cardboard box. The tape still clung to his fur in places, glinting under the sun like small scars of silver. I took the scissors again and snipped the last strips one by one. Every cut made a soft tear, followed by that same quiet whimper he didn't mean to make. No blood, just patches of raw red skin and tufts of fur matted down. When I ran a finger over his paw, the little pup twitched, but didn't pull away. It was trust, fragile, trembling, but real. I whispered, "Easy, Rook. It's over now." The name came out of nowhere, but when I said it, his eyes blinked once like he'd heard it before. I tore the lid off an empty drink cup, filled it from my own bottle, and slid it in front of him. He stared for a second, unsure, then leaned forward and took a small sip. Water dripped from his chin, darkening the dust on his chest. Another sip, then another. Each swallow sounded like a tiny victory. The sound of life deciding to stay. I don't think I've ever heard anything more beautiful. The young shepherd tried to stand, legs wobbling like wet branches, but he couldn't hold himself up. I caught him before he fell, felt the tremor run through him, and sat down right there on the asphalt with him in my lap. His breath smelled faintly of salt and fear. But beneath it, there was something else, something clean, like rain after a storm. The rescued puppy pressed his head against my chest, and for a moment, everything around us went quiet. The fryer hissed, a car horn blared, but it all felt far away. I could feel anger burning through the relief. Anger at whoever did this and at everyone who walked past. But under that anger was something softer, heavier. Responsibility. Because once a life looks at you like that, you can't unsee it. You can't walk away pretending you didn't feel it breathing in your hands. I dipped my fingers in the cup and let the water fall slowly over his muzzle. He closed his eyes, licking the drops, his body finally easing against mine. The heat still pressed down, but for the first time that day I didn't feel it. All I felt was that tiny heartbeat steadying itself, learning the rhythm of safety. His fur was sticky, my hands filthy. But I didn't care. He was alive, and alive meant there was still a chance to make it right. He lifted his head once, looked at me, then tucked his muzzle under my wrist, and didn't let go. I tore a strip from my work apron and wrapped it around him like a small blanket. The fabric smelled of bleach and fryer oil, but he didn't seem to care. The German Shepherd puppy pressed his nose into it, eyes half closed, his chest finally rising steady instead of shaking. I said it without thinking. Rook. It just came out like it had been waiting for me all day. A small, black, brave little thing. The name fit him before I even finished saying it. Rook, I repeated softly, brushing the dust from his ear. The little pup made a faint sound somewhere between a sigh and a whine, like he was answering. I smiled despite everything. It was the first smile I'd managed in a long time. My phone buzzed in my pocket, so I dialed the local rescue hotline I knew from a poster near the dumpsters. A recorded voice answered, "You've reached San Antonio Animal Outreach. Please leave a message." I left one short and shaky, trying to keep my voice from breaking. No collar, no tag, no chip, no one looking for him. Just a body someone decided to tape away. The sun was dropping lower, throwing long shadows under the picnic tables. People still came and went, stepping around the spot like nothing had happened there an hour ago. I logged the incident in my notebook. 15 minutes cleanup. The same line I always write when something spills. Except this time, it wasn't soda on the floor. It was a life. I tucked Rook into the basket on my cart, the one where I keep napkins and spray bottles. His head poked out over the edge, ears too big for his body, eyes following every sound. The rescued puppy still flinched when someone slammed a door, but he didn't hide anymore. He watched me, just me, like maybe he decided I was worth the risk. I cleaned tables one-handed, my other arm resting gently across the cart, feeling him shift, breathe, exist. Each time I looked down, I caught him staring back up. Those eyes saying more than any words ever could. The smell of grease and disinfectant filled the air. But now there was something else too. A faint warmth, a heartbeat near my elbow, a reminder that the day wasn't lost. I thought about how small he was, how close he came to disappearing under that table forever, and how strange it felt that fate handed him to me, a tired janitor who barely had space in his life for himself. But there he was, watching, waiting, trusting. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet promise formed. I wasn't letting this one go. The dinner rush was starting. Trays clattering, cars lining up by the drive-thru. I wheeled the cart toward the side door, past the trash bins to get him some air. The light hit his fur, turning it brown along the edges. For the first time, he didn't shake. I lowered the cart to the ground. When I set him down, the German Shepherd puppy placed both paws on my boot, like it was the only place in the world he belonged. The manager's voice hit before I even turned around. "Miguel, you can't keep that thing here. It's not your job." "Not my job." The words stung more than they should have. He was standing by the fryer, arms crossed, a clipboard in hand like it made him powerful. I looked down at the small pup in my cart, ribs showing, eyelids heavy, chest moving in shallow waves. "Tell me," I thought. "Whose job is it then?" "I'll finish my shift," I said quietly. "And I'll go." He sighed like it was a favor to him, not a choice for me. "Good," he muttered. "You can't save every stray that shows up." I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say that would change a man like that. The last thing I cleaned that day was the table. The same one. The metal was still warm from the sun, and for a moment I saw it again. The tape. The shaking body. The fear that nobody else saw. I wiped it slow, not to clean it, but to close the memory. Then I clocked out. The pup was curled up in the laundry basket I'd found in the back closet, wrapped in an old towel. He opened his eyes when I touched the handle like he knew what it meant. I carried him out through the side door, past the smell of grease and the hum of drive-through orders. Outside, the heat hit us like a wave, but it felt like freedom. My old pickup sat baking in the sun, dust on the hood and a cracked windshield. I set the basket on the passenger seat, turned the key and listened to the engine stutter before catching. The pup looked around, sniffing the air, uncertain, but curious. I reached over and rubbed his ear with my thumb. "Don't worry, little guy. We're leaving all that behind." We stopped at the small pharmacy down the block. I bought gauze, antiseptic, soft wipes, and the cheapest can of puppy food I could find. The clerk didn't even look up. It didn't matter. Every dollar I handed over felt like a decision I'd already made. Bills could wait, but this life couldn't. Back in the truck, I tore open the can. The smell made him perk up, and he licked the food like he wasn't sure he was allowed to eat it. I watched him. Slow bites, then faster ones, the hunger finally catching up to him. He stopped halfway, lifted his head, and just stared at me, eyes soft, almost questioning. That's when it hit me. I wasn't rescuing him anymore. He'd already chosen me. The light turned green, and I pulled onto the road. The sun was sinking behind the signs, turning the sky orange and gold. The pup shifted in the basket, crawled toward the center console and rested his nose against my wrist. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other under his chin. At the first red light, he pressed his nose closer, warm and steady, and stayed that way. The clinic smelled like disinfectant and quiet. I carried the pup through the door, his head tucked under my chin, his small chest still fluttering with each breath. The receptionist looked up startled, then softened when she saw him. "Walk in?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "He needs help." My voice cracked halfway through it. They took us right in. A tech lifted him gently from my arms and laid him on a metal table lined with a soft towel. The pup didn't struggle. He just watched me, eyes following every movement, making sure I was still there. The vet, a woman with silver hair pulled back tight, ran her hands along his ribs. No chip, no tag, just bones, heat, and a faint tremor that hadn't left since the parking lot. "He's dehydrated," she said quietly. Skin irritation from the adhesive. Maybe a little malnourished. Someone either didn't know how to care for him or didn't care at all. The words landed heavy in the small room. She dabbed at his legs with a soft cloth soaked in solution, loosening the last bits of tape glue from his fur. He flinched once, but stayed still, trusting the hands that helped him. The sound of the cotton against his skin was soft, like brushing dust off a forgotten photograph. The vet tilted her head, studying the bruises under the fur. "They're old," she said, "and he's young. Too young to have this kind of fear." Her voice was calm, but I could hear something breaking underneath it. "We see this too often," she whispered more to herself than to me. I nodded, though I couldn't find words big enough for what I was feeling. The pup lifted his head, licking at the doctor's wrist like he was saying thank you. She smiled small and tired, then looked at me. "Keep him hydrated, tiny meals every few hours. He needs rest more than medicine." She packed a small bag, antiseptic, gauze, puppy formula, a few samples of soft food. "Try to keep him warm," she added, "and keep talking to him. They know when someone's on their side." I reached into my pocket for cash, but she waved her hand. "Don't," she said softly. "Just take care of him." Her eyes followed us as I lifted the basket again, careful not to wake him. He had already fallen asleep, chin resting on the towel, his breathing slow and steady now. The tremble was gone. Outside, the heat had faded into the kind of Texas evening that smells like dust and gasoline. Cars passed, radios humming, the world spinning on as if nothing had changed. But something had. I could feel it in the weight of the basket in my hands. Not heavy, but full. I walked to the truck like I was carrying something made of glass. The little body inside shifted once, just enough for his paw to find the edge of the towel. He didn't stir again. I cradled him closer, my arms stiff from holding so much more than a pup. I stepped off the curb and for a second, the streetlight hit his face. Clean now, calm, safe. I carried him out of that clinic the way you carry something priceless. I carried him like a fragile promise, like a life that couldn't afford another fall. The night was too quiet. My apartment sat above a laundromat, walls thin, air thick with detergent and heat. The ceiling fan clicked with every turn, pushing around air that never seemed to cool. I laid an old towel in a laundry basket, tucked beside my bed, and set the German Shepherd puppy down. He blinked up at me, eyes glossy in the yellow light, ribs still visible beneath that soft black fur. I poured a little water into a cup lid and dipped my finger into it. When I touched his nose, he sniffed, hesitated, then licked the drop from my skin. So gentle, so careful, like the little pup was afraid even water might hurt him. I shredded a small piece of soft food with a fork and offered it on my fingertip. He ate it slow, tiny tongue brushing against my hand, his whole body leaning forward like he was trusting gravity itself. The floor was cool tile, easy to clean, empty like most of my life lately. The radio from the laundromat hummed through the floorboards, a dull rhythm of loneliness. Each time a door downstairs slammed, the young dog froze, tail low, body tense. Then he'd look up at me just to make sure I was still there. And when I nodded, he'd breathe again. It broke something inside me. That kind of faith from something so small. I sat on the floor beside him, back against the wall, the hum of the fan filling the silence between us. He crawled toward my leg, slow at first, then faster, as if deciding not to be afraid anymore. He pressed against me, his fur warm and slightly damp, that new clean smell of antiseptic and hope. I rested my hand on his side, felt the small rhythm of his heartbeat, faster than mine, fragile but steady. And for the first time I realized how much he'd already changed the air in this room. It wasn't just about rescuing him. It was about what I'd been running from. The emptiness that comes when you stop letting yourself care. I'd lost people before, walked away before they could hurt me, or before I could hurt them. It was easier that way. But this small rescued puppy, with his quiet eyes and cautious trust, didn't give me that choice. He needed me in a way that didn't ask permission. I fed him again around midnight. Just a few bites. He ate, then lifted his head, searching for my hand. When I touched him, he sighed. That deep, surrendering sound dogs make when they decide they're safe. He circled twice, lay down, and rested his chin against my arm. The fan kept spinning, washing the room in slow, soft movement. I leaned back against the wall, my body sore from the day, my mind heavier than my bones. I didn't know if I could be enough for him, if I had the patience, the money, the strength to carry another heart in my hands. But as he pressed closer, I stopped thinking. I just breathed with him, slow, steady. Sometime after midnight, he climbed out of the basket and onto my chest, curling into the space under my chin. The warmth of his tiny body pulsed against me, and the hum of the fan faded into nothing. That's how we fell asleep. Man and shepherd pup, two strays, pretending to belong somewhere. He slept soundly, and for the first time in years I did too. He drifted into dreams, paws twitching softly while I lay still, afraid to move. That night, as the city breathed outside my window, he fell asleep on my chest. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Morning came too soon. The fan was still turning, the air heavy and warm, and the first thing I heard was the soft sound of breathing beside me. Rook, the little pup, was curled in the towel basket, nose buried under his paw, twitching in sleep. For a second I let myself believe the world had gone quiet, that we could stay in that calm forever. But then the alarm buzzed. Work bills, the same routine waiting outside the door. I stood up, trying not to wake him. But the moment I touched the door knob, a high-pitched cry cut through the still air. It was sharp, panicked, the kind of sound that hits you right in the ribs. He scrambled up, eyes wide, searching for me. Hey, I'm right here," I said, kneeling down. The young dog pressed himself against my leg, shaking, claws scratching lightly at the floor. I hadn't realized how much he'd learned to need that one thing. Presence. And how much I already needed it, too. I tried again, slower this time, opened the door halfway. Another whine. Then a bark. Small, broken, but desperate. The neighbors started banging on the wall, one yelling, "Keep it down!" Through the thin plaster. I closed the door, leaned against it, and exhaled. Leaving him alone wasn't an option. I looked around the apartment, the mop, the cleaning cart I kept in the hallway, my old canvas messenger bag hanging from a nail. That's when it hit me. I pulled the strap loose, cut 2 holes in the sides, and looped it onto the front bar of my cart. Inside I laid his towel, soft and warm from last night. He watched the whole time, head tilted, tail barely wagging. When I picked him up and set him inside, the rescued puppy turned twice in a circle, then lay down like he already knew it was meant for him. The morning sun hit us hard when I stepped outside, but the air was clean. The sound of his breathing calmed the noise in my head. At the restaurant, I rolled the cart through the back door. Bleach, grease, voices. No one noticed the small dog hidden in the sling under my arm. I started mopping, moving from table to table, and he slept, tucked close, the rhythm of his breath matching the swing of my mop. Every now and then he'd peek out, brown eyes catching the light, then sink back into the towel. It looked ridiculous, a grown man pushing a cleaning cart with a sleeping shepherd pup hanging from his chest. But for the first time in months, I didn't care what anyone thought. I was proud that he was safe, proud that he'd stopped trembling, and terrified because I knew what it meant to care again. When you start caring, you risk losing, and I'd lost too many times already. Hours passed. Lunch rush came and went. I cleaned quietly, humming to him like my mother used to hum to me when I couldn't sleep. He stayed calm, eyes fluttering in dreams, tail twitching once in a while. Everything felt right, like we'd figured out how to exist together in the cracks of the world. Then outside, a sudden pop. A balloon from a kid's birthday slipped from my hand and burst against the hot concrete. The sound was sharp, echoing through the open doorway. The brave pup jolted awake, eyes wide, muscles stiff. A tiny whimper caught in his throat. I felt his heart race through the fabric pressed against my chest. And in that instant I saw it, the memory flash in his eyes. That same trembling, that same fear from under the table. On the street, laughter followed the noise. But in my arms, Rook was shaking all over again, like the world had suddenly turned back to that place he'd fought so hard to leave. The lunch rush was chaos. Trays clattering, fryers hissing, people shouting for refills. I was halfway through mopping the back patio when a group of teenagers spotted the little pucked in the canvas sling against my chest. One of them stopped, pulled out a phone, and aimed it right at us. "Yo, check it out," he laughed. The janitor brought his dog to work. A few others turned. Laughter followed, short, awkward, the kind that feeds on someone else's discomfort. Rook blinked up at them, his head barely poking out from the towel. He wasn't afraid this time. Not right away. He just stared, the young dog's gaze calm and steady like he didn't understand the joke. I turned my back, tried to keep working, but the voice behind me got louder. "You can't have animals here, man. That's gross." Then the sound I'd been dreading, the heavy stomp of the manager's shoes. He stopped near the mop bucket, crossing his arms. "Miguel," he said, his voice low, clipped. "What the hell is that?" I didn't answer. I just shifted the rescued puppy higher on my chest, his small weight pressing against my heart. He looked at me, then at the manager, tail twitching once. "You can't bring a dog in here," the manager said, glancing around as if the health inspector might appear out of nowhere. "It's a puppy," I said quietly. "He's clean. He's just resting." "I don't care," he snapped. "Either he goes or you do." The words hit harder than they should have. The smell of grease and floor cleaner mixed in my throat, and for a second I couldn't breathe. The German Shepherd puppy stirred, sensing my tension, his tiny paw pressing against my shirt. "I called the shelter," I said. "They're full. There's no place for him." "Then figure something out." "But not here." A customer standing near the counter had her phone out now too, recording, pretending she wasn't. The kids laughed again, and one of them whispered, "Poor guy probably lives with that dog." He was right. I did. I didn't even bother explaining. I unhooked the strap, slid the shepherd pup out, and held him against me. He looked up, confused, ears flicking at the noise. I could feel his heart racing again, fast like the day I found him under the table. "Fine," I said. "We're leaving." The manager muttered something about paperwork and turned away. I didn't wait. I pushed the mop aside, picked up my things, and walked out. Past the crowd, past the friars, through the same door I'd walked in 100 times before. The sun hit us full in the face. Rook squinted, then looked around, ears perked as if the whole world was new again. I walked across the parking lot until I reached that same red table, the one where it all started. The metal legs still shimmered in the light, the pavement still hot enough to sting through my shoes. For a moment I just stood there holding him, breathing in the air that had once smelled like fear. I knelt down and set him on the ground. He hesitated, then took a step forward, slow, cautious. I placed my hand on the table's underside, the same spot where the tape had held him. The surface was smooth now, the glue long gone, just faint scratches where he'd fought to move. The brave pup sniffed it, then looked up at me, tail low but steady. He didn't tremble. He didn't flinch. He just stood there, his reflection caught in the metal, small and strong. I laid my hand flat against that cold surface. A quiet promise, maybe, or just a memory I needed to face. And this time, when my fingers touched the place that once trapped him, Rook didn't move at all. He stayed still, calm, certain, like he finally knew that whatever had hurt him before was gone for good. The parking lot shimmered under the late Texas sun, waves of heat rising from the asphalt. Rook stood beside me, his small body trembling not from fear this time but from effort. He was tired, but his eyes were awake, brighter than I'd ever seen them. A white van pulled up, door sliding open with a soft metallic hiss. The logo on the side read Hill Country Animal Rescue. A woman stepped out, jeans, cap, gentle eyes. She carried a small kit under her arm, the kind that said she'd done this too many times. "You must be Miguel," she said. "You're the one who called about the rescued puppy." I nodded, unable to find words. Rook tilted his head, studying her, nose twitching at the new scent. She knelt slowly, letting him see her hands first. "Hey there, buddy," she whispered. Her voice was soft, practiced, like someone who knew that tone could heal before medicine did. She slipped a fresh collar from her pocket, stiff, a pale blue one with a tiny tag that said Hope printed on it. "This one's for him," she smiled. "A little better than duct tape, huh?" I swallowed hard, watching as she reached for the young shepherd. He didn't pull away this time. Her hands were steady, the way a storm passes, calm, inevitable. She rubbed ointment along the spots where the glue had burned through fur, cleaning gently, murmuring to him the whole time. Rook blinked, then leaned in, trusting open, his small frame soft against her palms. The moment felt sacred somehow. I crouched beside them, holding the leash she handed me. It was simple. Red nylon, frayed a little at the edge, but it might as well have been a golden thread. The brave pup sniffed it, then my hand, as if asking if it was really his. When I clipped it onto his new collar, he didn't resist. He just stood there wobbling on his paws, waiting for permission to try. The woman stepped back. "Go on," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I set him gently on the ground, both of us watching like it was the first sunrise we'd ever seen. Rook hesitated. One paw lifted, then sat down again. The pavement was hot, but the light felt kind. He looked up at me, blinked once, and took a step. Then another, and another. The German Shepherd puppy stumbled forward, awkward, fragile, but determined. Each movement was a small miracle. Shaky legs learning the meaning of freedom. The air smelled like fries and dust. The world too loud and too bright. But he kept walking, tail twitching like a heartbeat that finally found its rhythm. A little boy sitting at a nearby table stopped eating and stared. Without a word, he reached for his drink and set the paper cup on the ground near Rook. The pup paused, sniffed, and bent to lap the water, slow and careful. The boy grinned. "Good boy," he said softly. The woman wiped her eyes. I didn't even try to hide mine. For the first time since I found him, the shepherd dog wasn't hiding, wasn't trembling, wasn't waiting for rescue. He was moving toward something, toward light, toward sound, toward the simple joy of existing. He looked back once, catching my gaze, then gave a little tug on the leash, just enough to say, "Let's go." And I realized I wasn't leading him anymore. He was leading me. The sunlight caught his fur, turning the black into deep bronze, the edges glowing like he carried the warmth inside him. Now. He took 3 steps more, each one surer than the last, paused steady against the hot ground. Then he pulled on the leash again, gentle, insistent. His nose pointed forward toward the open street and the day ahead. Rook tugged, not back, not sideways, forward into the light. The paperwork took less than an hour, but it felt like a lifetime. A few signatures, a small donation, and suddenly Rook wasn't the rescued puppy anymore. He was mine. My name printed next to his felt strange and right all at once, like a promise that had been waiting to exist. The lady from the shelter smiled when she handed me the folder. "You did a good thing," she said, but I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt like someone who'd finally found something worth keeping alive. A week later, the video showed up online. Someone must have filmed that moment. Rook taking his first steps in the sunlight. The clip spread fast. Tag Dog Rescue USA. Heartwarming Pet Rescue. German Shepherd Puppy Rescue. Thousands of people watched him stumble and rise again. Comments poured in. Donations for the shelter. Messages asking about adoption. Prayers, hearts, emojis. I didn't know people could care so much about a small dog they'd never met. Maybe that's what makes dogs special. They remind us how to feel without asking permission. Even my manager saw the video. He found me on break a few days later, scratching at his neck, eyes avoiding mine. "Didn't know it was that bad," he muttered, then softer. "You can have mornings from now on. Fewer people. Bring him if you need to." I nodded. Didn't say thank you, just meant it. Rook grew stronger fast. His fur filled in, glossy and dark again. He learned how to sit, how to wait, how to meet the world without shrinking from it. We'd walk through the park before dawn, air cool and quiet, his paws clicking on the pavement beside mine. Every few steps he'd glance up. That same look he gave me under the table as if to say, "Still here?" And I'd always answer, "Yeah, buddy, still here." Sometimes we'd stop by the restaurant after hours. He'd sniff around the tables, tail wagging, curious, unafraid. Once a little girl ran up and asked if she could pet him. Rook hesitated just a second, then leaned forward, pressing his nose into her hand. Her giggle broke something open inside me. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was learning joy. We practiced every day. He'd sit by my mop bucket, watching fries drop, tail sweeping slow circles. The cook started saving scraps for him. Even the teenagers who once laughed at us now knelt down to scratch behind his ears. He forgave faster than I could ever hope to. One afternoon on our way home, we passed that same red table again. The air smelled of sun and metal, but no fear lingered there now. Rook trotted ahead, confident, leashed loose in my hand. He stopped by the table, looked up at it for a long moment, and then quietly lowered himself beneath it. No trembling, no panic, just curiosity. He lay down, paws outstretched, tongue lolling in the heat. A bird flew by, casting a shadow over his nose. He watched it pass, tail tapping the concrete like a metronome of calm. I stood there, hand resting on the table's edge, watching him settle, free, safe, whole. And as cars hummed past and laughter floated through the air, Rook closed his eyes, resting his head on his paws, peaceful, unguarded, curious about the world again. He chose that spot himself, the same place where fear once lived. Now it was just shade and sunlight and a dog who finally knew he'd never be alone again. Most people that day never looked under the table. They threw away their cups, wiped their hands, and went back to their lives. But one person did, and that changed everything. Sometimes all it takes is a second glance, a quiet pause, a choice to care. That tiny decision turned a trembling shadow into a brave pup, who now runs in the sunlight. It turned fear into trust, pain into motion, silence into life. Rook's story isn't just about one rescued puppy. It's about every abandoned dog waiting for someone to notice, for someone to stop pretending not to see. His journey from being taped under a table to standing tall in the open shows the power of kindness when the world looks away. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. I see it every day now. How a single act of compassion can ripple through a community. The video of Rook reached strangers in other states. People donated, some adopted, some volunteered. All because one small shepherd dog reminded them what empathy looks like. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility, it's pet care, it's cleaning wounds and feeding hope. It's showing up even when you're tired. It's saying, I see you, and meaning it. So if you're watching this, remember Rook. Remember what one small act of courage can do. Share his story, not for views, but for the next trembling life waiting in the shadows. Because every share, every donation, every word of care can save another.